Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Otsego City Council meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, May 27th. Audra, can you have the record show that our city attorney's present, our city planners present, our city engineers absent? We have Councilmember Dunlap, Katie, and Tanner present. At this time, Councilmember Lund is not here, and we have our city administrator. At this time, I'll ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item this evening is our open forum. This is the portion where you can come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Would anyone like to speak at this time? Right, we will close the open forum. Audra, can you have the record show that our city engineer is present now? And we will move on to item 2 to consider our agenda for approval. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or delete at this time? Adam?
Mayor, council, staff would request to add item 6.2 to accept a resignation from a city employee.
Madam Mayor,
That's right.
I'd also like to bring down 3.3 from the consent agenda. We can make that 5.1. And then I would also like to reverse the order of 4.1 and 4.2 so that we're discussing waterfront first. That's the way that the Planning Commission did it. I think it's less confusing to do it that way.
Anyone have any issues? Okay.
With that, I will move to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the consent agenda, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ryan?
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
There's a motion by Ryan and seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will move on to the new item 4.1, which is the Otsego waterfront. And I will turn this over to Dan.
Before I give the planning report, just for Mr. Greniger and for Mr. Pratt, your applications were just approved on the consent agenda. So you guys are all set.
Thank you guys for coming. Okay.
So to the application from Modern Construction of Minnesota, they've submitted a planned unit development stage plan, a preliminary plat of 1 lot and 3 outlots, and also consideration of vacation and of drainage and utility easements. This is a reconsideration of an application submitted and approved in 2023 that was expired because they did not move forward with final plat approval as required by the zoning ordinance. So they've submitted revised plans for the development addressing prior concerns and are representing it for consideration. The property is guided by the comprehensive plan for mixed uses, which consists of commercial, office, or service retail businesses, along with opportunity for multiple family dwellings, along with the property that exists as 2 lots currently, plus an outlot, which is entirely within Wild Scenic Recreational River District, protecting land adjacent to the Mississippi River. This is located east of Highway 101 at County Road 39, just south of the Otsego Waterfront Development and Nathie 101 Market. The preliminary plat would re-subdivide the property into, again, the 1 buildable lot as well as 2 outlots, including the Wild and Scenic Protected parcel, as well as an outlot that's currently within the floodway district of the Mississippi River. Can't be developed until the developer is working on a process with the Army Corps of Engineers to allow that area to be filled. So they're primarily doing this for the purpose of developing lot one, block one. Prior application included completion of a traffic study showing that the intersection at Quantrell Avenue and 90th Street could accommodate a significantly larger development than what's currently being proposed without any additional improvements to that intersection. Sewer and water utilities are available to the property, but the development does require an improvement to the existing lift station in the area, which would be a developer responsibility. And then they provided stormwater plans for the development, meeting the city's and MPCA requirements. Because the two lots were previously platted, there were drainage and utility easements dedicated when those lots were subdivided. Those would be vacated when this property comes into the final platted, similar to the preliminary plat that's shown. And then finally, with any subdivision application that includes public improvements, there's a requirement at final plat for a development contract to be executed. The revised site plan shown in as the architectural drawing, the principal building has been changed to 135 apartments and 12,800 square feet of commercial. Prior proposal included restaurant. This is only retail or office or service type business within that square footage. Setbacks for the development would be similar to what was proposed previously, moving the building forward towards Quantrell Avenue to try and maximize the developable area within the property, given the wild and scenic limitations on the outlot to the east. The properties or the buildings also set back approximately 20 feet from the north property line. The one issue with that is we do need documentation from the architect that the width of the fire lane that's provided is adequate based on the construction of the building. One of the items discussed at length with the prior application was provision of off-street parking. What's shown on the screen is 352 parking spaces shown, which includes 65 spaces within the building. The recommendation from the Planning Commission would use a methodology to calculate a mixed-use parking requirement for 309 uses or 309 spaces, basically looking at the offset peak demand for each of the uses within the building, not necessarily just a cumulative total for this many apartments and this much commercial space. How that breaks down is 188 surface parking stalls. There's also the need to increase the enclosed space to 121 stalls. Pedestrian access to the site would be available along Quantrell Avenue. And there's also an opportunity to create a pedestrian connection to the east through the outlots up to Carrick's Landing. That would be defined in terms of its location and timing at final plat, pending the resolution of the floodway application. Landscaping and exterior lighting plans would also need to be submitted at final plat approval, as we don't have those at this time. The building plans have changed, reducing the overall structure by a story. It's now a 6 foot or a 6-story building. That's 5 stories usable space above the parking enclosure. The commercial component is now at grade to the south of the residential building or the parking garage, essentially. The height of the building is 70 feet or 6 stories. That's less than was proposed previously, and it's within the 75 feet that the Planning Commission is recommending for this area under what's proposed as the M1 mixed use district. So the Planning Commission was supportive of the proposed height of the building. Looking at the construction of the building, these are to be commercial type structures requiring 65% glass or masonry finishes. This plan only has 32% grade A materials, so that obviously needs to be modified and increased as part of the final plat submission. One of the other issues with the prior submission was that the apartments within the building didn't meet the minimum floor area per unit requirements that are specified by the zoning ordinance. The revised plan meets all of those requirements. And then they are showing some signs on the architectural plans. City staff's recommendation would be just to apply the standard allowance for wall signs on all 4 sides of the building up to 15% of the wall area, with a maximum size of 200 square feet per per sign, as this is within the freeway corridor district. City staff is recommending approval based on consistency with the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision ordinance. Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider the application at their meeting last Monday. They recommended approval subject to the 18 conditions recommended by city staff.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to comment?
Good evening, council. Jesse Hartung, 18837 Ogden Street Northwest, Elk River. No further comments other than say that looking for support tonight with the approval of the 18 conditions listed. And I stand for questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If you want to stay there, you can. Council, questions for the applicant or for staff regarding this application?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Ryan.
Mr. Hartung, at the Planning Commission, I think you said that there were 3 conditions that the council talked about last time, and that all 3 of those were resolved. Can you just go through what those 3 conditions were and how they were resolved?
Sure. So the letter that I received for the denial in the last application was the unit sizes, where I believe we had some 1 bedrooms that didn't meet. Those have been resolved, as Dan indicated. We've increased the size to meet all the stipulations. The second denial was for the parking, and under the mixed use district and staff recommendation, we've met that parking on site now without any street parking. I do recognize some of that still says proof of parking. However, at the planning commission, I said that was just, it was intended to be what was required by the city there. So that's been met. And then the building height was the other issue. And so now we are under that proposed mixed use building height of 75 feet. And so therefore we believe we've met all the stipulations for why we were denied last time.
Under the, so I want to make sure I'm understanding. Under the current ordinances, you would not be meeting parking or building height, correct?
And my understanding is with the PUD, I don't know if there is a specific building height ordinance. I guess I'd leave that to city staff to comment on. As far as parking goes, we do have enough space on site to meet the existing parking requirements, as I understand them, but I had deferred to my architect team on that. However, we were recommended to follow the mixed use guidelines and therefore are, going along with the recommendation on the 309 parking stalls, I believe it was.
And can I ask a question to follow up with that? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I was doing math in my head.
So I was also here the evening when you were here for the planning commission, and there was also discussion about you having 65 stalls currently in the building now, but you need 121. You did say you'd be able to figure that out.
Correct.
I
Yep.
guess I'm struggling with that one since the picture is the same as what it was last week. What would you be changing on this, which would ultimately change the design of this building?
Yeah, so we would meet the stipulation as meeting the 121 covered. So we'd extend the parking garage area to meet the additional stalls required by the city code or by the approval of planning commission and hopefully the approval of city council tonight.
Would that change then where you were planning to put your retail space to the south then? That was going to be a one.
That would still stay there. So the only thing we would be doing is increasing the covered parking spots. So the retail would most likely move a little bit further south to accommodate additional parking garage stalls.
So would that ultimately be changing what I'm looking at? That would change what I'm looking at tonight.
It would modify what you see here to accommodate the stalls, but the structure above parking would all stay the same. The square footages of the commercial would all stay the same. And
Okay.
the proximity of the commercial relating to the apartments would all stay the same. And we would, of course, have that submitted prior to final plat approval.
Follow up on that. Also, exterior finishes, you're at 32%. You need to be 65%. What
Correct.
would your
Yep, we would meet that.
And Mayor, quick question.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, I think I read in the previous application that was brought up as an issue, as was the setback. Correct.
I guess this is a question for the planner and the attorney. When we're looking at applications, we're looking at what they're presenting and usually the drawing is complete, but and I get that this is not the final, but what discretion do we have can we request that it be what we are expecting to see? So I mean, it does change if we're shifting everything to the south, as Mr. Hartung just said, the picture does change. The space requirements for outside and inside. I know he's showing that he has 309 spots, but that's item 4.2 now is the mixed use where we're changing parking. So it feels like we're applying some old stuff, looking at new stuff. And to me, the picture isn't what we are ultimately going to be building there.
So Mayor, in the planned unit development district, the site plan and the building plans ultimately become part of the agreement between the city and the developer. So to the issues regarding the parking, the building materials, other items that are all listed in those conditions, either the council is comfortable approving the application subject to those conditions, or requiring that certain conditions that you have issues with or concerns about be addressed before you improve this development stage plan subject to conditions. They do still have to submit revised plans that come back with the final plat, but it's just a matter of when you want to see that before you ultimately give approvals.
Other questions?
What? Oh, I was just gonna add on to that, Madam Mayor, that's what I struggle with here is because I don't like denying applications, but I feel like the council at this point has the most discretion to state what we think this should be in order to follow ordinances or variances to those ordinances. And so that's why I tend to look at this like some of this stuff is being repeated. I mean, at the last time we reviewed this application, a lot of this stuff was the same.
Other comments? Cory?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a question, I guess, for maybe Ron. When we do a traffic study, like we did here, what does that all entail? I mean, does it entail future projections and?
Yeah, so what they looked at before was complete build out of the entire area. They looked at the comparison to what the development was proposed to be before versus what was being added higher level, and then made sure that the level of service at the intersection of 90th Street and Quantrell still met the level of service that the city requires.
Do you know offhand what was proposed for that area originally?
We had 2 lots that were industrial or commercial, and now it's one apartment complex with some retail.
Mayor, the traffic study looked at the original concept plan that Modern Construction proposed, which was 400 and some apartments plus, I believe it was close to 30,000 square feet of commercial. So that was evaluated for the most intense possible development of this site. And then it took into consideration the undeveloped portions of Otsego waterfront north of 90th Street.
Okay, thank you. I guess I kind of feel the same way. I'd feel more comfortable seeing the changes on here incorporated in the drawing before, supporting it.
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask a couple of questions? So, um, you're short 60 stalls in the parking garage, is that correct?
Mayor. So there is no PUD requirement. The planned unit development is a custom zoning district that's based on the existing requirements in the ordinance. The city's been very clear throughout this process that they wanted one off-street parking stall per dwelling unit enclosed. That's been the standard that the other buildings have all been held to. That's what's intended to be added as part of the M1 district. So that's been clear all along. The exterior materials, we've been clear too that those needed to meet the commercial standards because what is designated as a mixed use district is intended to be commercial zoning that allows for apartments. That's what it is basically. So anytime that you get into trying to do a planned unit development, you're doing something outside the boundaries of the existing ordinance. Otherwise, this would be zoned R7, the building height would be 4 stories, and you'd have your brick requirement, your parking requirement, et cetera. So there are give and takes when you're doing a planned unit development district, and it's much more complicated than just doing straight zoning. So yes, the city commonly will approve plats and other developments subject to multiple conditions, including changes to architecture, changes to the site plan, et cetera. We're trying to do this project as the same time as the city was trying to define the PUD or the M1 zoning district. And the reason we were trying to do that before having this come back was because this project had come forward, the one on the Richard Lefebvre project had come forward. We had interest in multiple family on the west side of the city, all of which ran into concerns about various elements because we were trying to just do them on a case by case basis. So the intent was to try and set the global standard and then have this move forward. Now this project generally does meet the M1 district requirements, provided you tweak the parking, fix the building materials, adding glass and brick, etc. So it can move forward. And that's part of the reasons why when we set the agenda, we had the M1 district first to set the global picture, then deal with this one. But ultimately, because this doesn't necessarily fit into a zoning district that exists, the city council is basically making a judgment and you have the most discretion as this. So your options are approve it with conditions, table it, request that the conditions be made. The city attorney and I were consulting on the 60-day rule, and we do have time yet within the city's allowed review period for that, or deny the request based on non-compliance or just non-compliance with the intent of the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. Staff's recommendation would be either approve it with conditions or table it. There's no reason to go to the step to deny it yet. Give the developer an opportunity to respond if that's the direction you would prefer to go.
Madam Mayor. So I guess that was going to be my question is denial would mean they would have to come back similar to what happened last year, which is a 4/5 vote to say something has significantly changed, correct? A denial lasts for a period of time.
I think the issue would be is if then the city adopted the M1 district, they wouldn't be applying for a planned unit development any longer. They'd be applying for preliminary plat and site and building plan review and a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
So would that extend out that timeline?
It'd essentially be an all new application. The city would have another 120 days. We're almost to the end of the initial 60 days, so the city can extend that to August 5th at this point.
When I asked the questions just about the 32 and going up 65%, just I wasn't picking on that. I just was pointing that out and asking for clarification on that. I don't deny that you can put in larger windows and more brick. Like that's not the question, but adding additional parking that was covered, it seemed as though that was a little bit of a surprise last week when it got brought up and the planning commission was talking about it. And you're like, oh, we'll just add it. So to me, I guess anticipated that you would have taken something, talked to your architect, submitted it to staff and then they made our packet and look different. This is no different than last week with those comments. So, and I, Mhm. But we wouldn't be tabling it under the M1. We would be tabling it requesting changes to the drawing and what you're gonna actually be building.
The current,
So that's the difference. It wouldn't be tabling it under an M1. M1 is the next item. So just so you're clear on that.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
I have a few more
Yeah.
questions.
So
So I wasn't involved previously, obviously, being newer to the council. So just trying to understand, the information that we had provided as a city and staff back to these guys, that we indicated previously in regards to the one stall per unit. And, but we didn't get the updated plans, if I'm correct, that show that.
Mayor. So the previous application approved in 2023 had a much larger enclosed parking structure that
Okay.
was to serve both the residential and the commercial. It would have met the one stall per unit, so the plan changed. And I was just looking back, the 2023 approval listed 17 conditions, which included the proof of parking issue and the exterior building materials, along with a number of these other things. So
Madam Mayor, I would just say that that's my issue, is that this was not a Memorial Day weekend thing. This was a 2-year. The exterior materials, the setback requirements, the parking, it's been 2 years, not a weekend, that there was an opportunity to change the plans to do that.
It's not as easy to add parking in this situation. It's about 60 grand per stall if it's underground. 60. $60, right? Yeah. So I have a question. If we approve with conditions today, just a question, um, uh, and he comes back with revised plan, where is he bringing that plan to? Is that for building permit? And that's the opportunity. Somebody has a chance to step in and correct things, or is it prior to that? Is there another review after this?
Mayor, because this is a plat as well as a planned unit development, the application initially comes back to staff for review recommendation to the city council on the final plat, the final PUD development plans, and the development contract. Council can always also refer a final plat back to the planning commission if there are issues within that that you feel that there warrants their further review as well.
So I have a question for you. If you, if, once you get an approval, that means you can go get the financing you need to fund these other activities in order to support the redesign and the additional, like the soil borings and stuff like that. Okay. Okay. Mhm. Okay. Okay.
Mayor, just to be clear, that the discretion level is reduced if you approve it subject to conditions. You'd have to deny it based on the finding that they're not meeting the specific conditions.
And
Right.
Mayor, that's right. I do get a little nervous, if I'm being frank, because I don't think we have an agreement on when conditions are being met. I think that concerns me.
Mhm.
All the conditions that are listed right now, no. No, because I don't agree with all the conditions. I can answer that very easily for you. Meet the ordinance. Yes, it's going to be the parking requirements. It's going to be the building height requirements. It's going to be the setback requirements. And the other stuff that I understand are easy to change, like the grading, that kind of stuff. But they do not. I think that would be accurate, but I don't know. So you're trying to project into the future. I don't know what the M1 district looks like yet. So let me ask you this. You understand, if you had submitted a plan to us that met all of our ordinances, we could not deny it. You know that. I mean, isn't that accurate?
Okay.
Mayor, again, it's because it's a planned unit development, there isn't necessarily a yes or no black and white framework to work on in reviewing this application. That's the point of having the M1 district in place. I believe if the M1 district were approved as written and recommended by the council or planning commission, the site and building plans would still need to be revised to address the building materials, the off-street parking, and the setback on the north property line.
And the underground and the
Yeah.
enclosed. So it's, oh,
Off-street parking.
Madam Mayor, I have a question, another question. So is this, typical procedures when a project is brought forward or development is brought forward and there's conditions that need to be met, that the next review period, if approved, the next review period is the opportunity to say yay or nay and to, and have them go back to the drawing board if they're not meeting the conditions. If we do a conditional approval today for the next step to be them meeting all the criterias that 18, 19, 17, whatever number it is that you've written out. I did review some of those. It makes sense from what I can tell. But I guess is this normal? Is this typical?
Mayor, so with a planned unit development, now is the point at which the first decision is this an acceptable land use. There are details that may need to be resolved, landscaping plan, exterior lighting, plus building materials, off-street parking, etc. But this is the chance to say yes or no to the overall concept. If you approve it subject to conditions, then the council is limited by future action to the scope of those conditions. So does the building have 65% glass, masonry material? Are there 121 interior parking stalls and 309 parking stalls overall, etc.? So can't then in the future look at it and say, you know what, I just don't like this concept at all. So,
which, to his point, the three pieces for our denial that he sent his architect, we had to base it on what was approved the first time.
correct.
We are not looking at that application anymore. That one has changed. This is what we're looking at. We have the most discretion tonight.
Mhm.
What I mean is you've changed, this is not the same apartment building that you submitted last time.
No.
Is what- Yes, so I guess that's what
Yeah,
I'm meaning.
Mayor.
It's not the same picture.
It's a new application. It stands separate from the prior actions.
That's what I guess I was saying. It's totally new. It's like the first time we're looking at it is the way we need to be looking at this and not judging it from the previous one. But we need to be looking at this. Attorney? Attorney, would you agree with that? His interpretation of,
Mayor, my understanding is the previous application was denied, so it doesn't set any precedent. This is a new application. Can judge it on the merits of, now, of course, he can take that, this is a PUD application, so there's discussion about what the council wants to see and what the
Mhm.
developer wants to see, and there's give and take there. So he can take that as guidance on what he thinks the council wants to see, but the council is not bound by anything that he submitted previously because it was not approved.
And Councilmember Dunlap, that's the struggle I've been trying to articulate is that there isn't clear guidance under the PUD, right? And so the only guidance I had was my written formal denial, which we believe we've corrected based on all the feedback.
I think the,
Would you approve the plan?
the problem
don't
we're
know.
trying to answer that is we don't
think
know
it's-
yet.
I don't think it's also fair that we have to answer that. We are discussing.
I'm not demanding you to, I'm just asking if you guys, because how would I, you guys are asking me, or it sounds like suggesting I should update the plans. But what assurances are there that you guys even agree with the project? I think there is some responsibility on the council's behalf to let a developer know. Mr. Hartung, we understand there's these 8 conditions. We still don't think it fits. We still don't think this is the right project for these reasons. Otherwise, how can anybody get any development done in the city? And so I think it's a
We've
fair
seen
question.
Plenty of development happening. Councilman Brigady?
Yes, it's not that I don't see this as a fit in this area. I liked your concept previously, myself. There were other disputes, but the fact of the matter is, I feel like, yes, this is a brand new application. I am concerned with the parking. I know with I should say the enclosed covered parking, we've got 65 within currently, and you've got to get to 121. Is that viable? I mean, I'm a visual person. I need to see something. I know you're telling me it is, but what are we going to lose from that? Are we losing anything with this concept or with
So-
that parking addition?
The only thing that would be changing as part of the condition, which I would be bound by to the city for further approval, is that all the units stay the same, right? Everything else stays the same. The commercial space, everything stays the same. I have to extend the parking garage to get those stalls.
But,
And so the logical spot is you extend those and you just cover the surface spots, right? So that's the plan.
but then that would mean your commercial needs to go above the parking. So it does,
No, the commercial would just move south there. So it'd still be street level commercial as presented.
so now it's gonna come out even farther. So when I'm looking at this gray hatch line, that becomes, everything just moves south.
The commercial portion would move south.
And the other covered parking would be underneath that because this commercial is in front of your apartments.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
So,
it would still stay in front of that.
so we're gonna have covered parking and then in front of that is commercial. So some people park in the flat part and then some people are underneath the apartments.
No, it would just be one big covered parking garage. And so basically, what you can
But see, again,
is-
I'm a visual person, so that's what I'm not
Sure.
understanding. If you turn the picture, explain to me what it's going to look like.
Yeah, if we can, I don't know the best way to do that for you, but I'd be happy
Um,
to show you the portion that would just move south.
Dan, do you have the drawing? Yes.
There's a section on there, Mayor, that's labeled.
So this picture right here, you're telling me this is gonna move south and this roof line would be covered.
Correct, this would move out, and then these people would have decks above that. Where the white area is, that just extends. Everything else stays the same.
Extends outward?
Correct,
Comes to the south.
comes with south.
By
That would
by
actually.
how
afford
many? By how many?
The required stalls. So the 60,
So that creates one
50,
row, that
8.
creates 2 rows inside. What does that mean? Like, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
You're the developer, not me.
it would, I'd have to pull the plans up to see how many per row. But it would actually afford balconies for that level there too as well, so.
Mayor, it'd probably at least be 64 feet because 20-foot deep stalls, 24-foot wide drive out.
It would likely bring the parking structure back to where it was previously. So I believe we had roughly that amount of stalls previously.
And you wouldn't put the commercial then above it with your stairs like you had before?
Well, that would block the units on that level. And Councilmember Geo, I much preferred the previous plan, but unfortunately that we couldn't get approval over the building heights, and so then that required a redesign that again makes the project viable as it stands. I will certainly be bringing back, assuming this gets approved, a phase 2 that has a lot of the stuff that phase 1 didn't get approved. For phase 2 and hopefully phase 3, but it's an extremely nice project in my opinion. We've got high quality living, lots of it in different varieties from studios all the way to 3 bedrooms. We're bringing 12,000 square feet of commercial. We're going to try to get the river completely back to the city or back from within the wild and scenic floodway so that we can develop that as a park and bring all kinds of amenities. But it's been a battle for 3 years, and I don't think, you guys obviously understand that, and I've been here, and there just isn't a lot of clarity. So again, I'm just trying to understand what would the council approve, and why not this with the conditions?
So then my question to you is why not present a picture of exactly what it's supposed to look like?
Because I haven't had the clarity. And so originally we had presented something that was, I think, 81 feet, which is going to be 6 feet over what the M1 district allowed.
Right. But if
That
you
had to
kept
be
the same
redesigned.
building and showed us a picture exactly what this looks like, why is that not an option then? I'm just asking. I mean, you
It-
keep asking us questions, so now I'm asking it of you.
So that certainly is an option. Again, it will require me to go back and redesign it, which will take time. We'll have to resubmit it through planning commission, which will take time. And then it'll have to come back to you guys. And so now we're talking about maybe a build the year after, right? Maybe we don't get in this winter. It delays all the other pieces that this is a prerequisite for.
But when you see this as, so we put the stipulations, you then submit us a picture as it comes to final plat. The council can send it back to planning commission and you're back to where you were before, had you just submitted what you wanted to build the first time.
Correct. However, everything else would have moved forward in the process. And if there's still a concern over, I guess my question, Mayor, is what I fail to understand is if we provide the covered parking spaces, are you guys going to come back and say you don't like how it looks? I guess I'm just not understanding where the disconnect is and shifting the parking garage and enlarging it. Because if it meets the requirements under the M1, why would it be denied down the road?
Well,
Other than
shouldn't be
prejudice?
denied if you're meeting.
And that's.
I guess I
that's my
look back,
point
I
exactly.
look back at the other apartment buildings that have been
Yeah.
built in the city. We just haven't faced what we have faced with this project before.
Respectfully to them, they're boring, right? I mean, they're boring
Okay.
apartments. It's nice apartments, but respectfully, they haven't broken ground on a mixed use development. They did apartments, right? This is a community area. They're not building a park that's going to be a $2 to $5 million park development. They did apartments. And that's not what we've ever tried to present to you guys. I've tried to present a regional hub and a destination to you with commercial amenities that are both public and private. Build out a park system, which has to be phase 2, because who in the right mind would make the kind of investments? Nobody would make the investments I've already made, additional investments to develop this. And we have submitted previously. You've seen all the park concepts.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of due diligence on all of this. So I'm 100% committed to this project. I'm asking for city council after all these years to understand there's a couple of conditions that we can easily meet. And if those conditions are met, why would it be denied down the road? And so why not move forward with it now?
Shifting gears, I have one other question. What is your, before it was, you're gonna be a restaurant. We had
Correct.
the upstairs, which I'm not supposed to be referring back to that because we're looking at this. What is your anticipation for commercial here?
What the market brings. I mean, I'm still evaluating the restaurant. Obviously, I can come back and, submit that through the city if that makes sense, but it's what the market would allow and what the market's looking for. I've got a number of clients who wish not to be made public at this point.
Okay.
Perhaps at final plat approval or after approval, we'll know about them.
Okay.
That want to be in a project that's got those kind of amenities.
But then how does that, so to stop you, looking
Yeah.
at planner, how does that change then if one of them is a restaurant? Because
So Mayor, they'd have to apply for a development stage plan amendment to basically recalculate the parking with a restaurant in there and demonstrate that there's sufficient to meet the ordinance requirement.
And again, that's no different than any other restaurant that comes in and says, hey, I'd like to put a restaurant here, right? You guys will vet that process if and when it comes. It's a bummer. I did have to pull those out of there, but we made a commitment to downtown Elk River with a new location. I'd love to bring a restaurant here. I wanted to bring the rooftop restaurant, but, and I fully intend to bring those in phase 2. This project will be a wild success. The demand will be through the roof. And then we'll come back and we'll ask the council for phase 2 to approve some more amenities and hopefully with the M1 district, we won't have such unknowns here, right? We can move forward with phase 2, but as it sits right now, again, council, I'm asking you guys to understand the trials and tribulations of a small local developer and support that as small government is supposed to do. And as everybody says they do, understand I'm fully in support of meeting those criteria. It's not uncommon to have a plan approved with conditions, which this plan had previously been approved with conditions, and allow me to go forward and let this project move forward and bring it back to you. There's nothing that says you can't, if I don't meet those requirements, there's nothing that says you can't deny it then.
Madam Mayor, can you clarify, you said I can't read the plan because the text is too dark, but I believe there is still a sky lounge.
There is
in
no
there.
sky lounge on this. We are bringing some rooftop amenities for the tenants. This will be the only rooftop amenities, I think, in 20 or 30 miles, but that they have to be private because of fire code. We don't have the ability to get the second access up there and different things like that. So people renting and living in
must
the
have
building
better
will have
vision than me.
rooftop terrace, and we'll have garden plots and everything up there as well.
I thought that was the sky lounge, but I can't read it.
Madam Mayor.
Too tiny. Can't read it. Corey?
Mr. Harding, can you speak to a little bit about phase 2, a little about your plans?
Sure. Yeah, so the grand's plan was to develop on this site, through a number of phases and through a series of phases. And I don't know if I'm getting double there, but through a series of phases is ultimately have a hotel, a couple of restaurants, anywhere between 30 and 60,000 square feet of commercial, huge public plaza. The park development will have docks, gazebos, public and private amenities, and really create a regional destination, for something that you would see similar to, I would say, St. Louis Park's West End, similar to kind of what they're doing in Champlin, but that's sort of a little bit more sparse and not as well consolidated. Very similar to like a Stillwater downtown area. And so that's the goal long term. I brought some pretty bold and grand visions and ideas for phase 1. However, to make those economically feasible, we needed to be 1 story higher, and we weren't able to overcome that. And so phase 1 has to be a little scaled back, and then in phase 2, that will allow additional amenities to be brought to the city.
So that would be like future construction and like another building, and
Correct.
so you must own quite a bit of land in there.
It's in total roughly 14 acres.
Yeah.
And so the plan is to do a couple of different phases and continue to build on and lease out space and add amenities as we go.
How many other developments have you done?
I've done a number, so I've got over 20 years experience in construction, including small single families to multi-million-dollar homes. I've done multifamily developments in Minneapolis. We've done row homes, high-end. Row home sounds low-end, but very high-end row homes right in the heart of Northeast. I've done smaller single-family developments in Zimmerman and Big Lake. I did a $6.5 million project in St. Michael, single-family development. This will be my first mixed use.
Okay.
I've bought and remodeled commercial real estate and residential real estate.
Okay.
But this will be my first mixed use project. But I'm partnering with Bauer Design Build. We'll have a large scale, well-known, respected general contractor running the project.
Just a quick question. We have kind of the same sort of thing in Elk River, and that commercial, which everybody thought would take off. What can you say to convince me that this commercial will take off more than that did?
Well, you're talking downtown Elk River?
Yeah.
And so, Tipsy on Main is now downtown Elk River, so we know downtown quite well. I've proposed a project like this downtown a number of years ago. Downtown, it struggles from it's all private land, right? But it's all individual private owners is the biggest struggle there. And the city of Elk River has spent, I don't know how many tens of thousands on many studies in my time in Elk River. I think I've seen 3 of these now, and none of it's really come to fruition. But this project being private run allows, and being one big, right, like 14 acres, multiple phases being private run. That's where the big difference is. You don't have to deal with a ton of different individual owners that have their own ideas and their own stuff and their own financial abilities to be able to bring this to life. So
Because I picture this as, I don't know if it's an apartment building there on the corner that has all of the, like commercial stuff on the base of it.
Granite Shores.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was like,
I'm-
weren't you part of?
I'm quite familiar with that. I lived in Granite Shores for a period there. My construction office was in Granite Shores. I remodeled a good portion of Granite Shores for tenants down there. The idea is there, but it's very hard, I think, for Elk River to do much of anything. Even their most recent plan that they released, it says left and right, up and down. It's all requires private partnership with private landowners. So
Cause
I've learned anything, it's impossible to get everybody on the same page.
Because
That's what ran.
I would have thought that would have really taken off there, and I've always been surprised that, you didn't see little shops in there and boutiques and all that.
Yeah, you'll see it here with the city's council support here. You will see it here 100%.
Let's,
We'll develop something that's got world-class amenities that attracts people, not just from the city of Otsego, but brings all that financial incentive and that, all that economic development from residents that are traveling many miles to come here.
well, for me, I mean, the thing that catches my eye is not so much the apartments, it would be the commercial stuff.
Correct.
But I guess I'm not convinced if it didn't work there, it's not gonna work here. And you can't, I know you can't tell the future and if it's gonna make it or not, but
Yeah. I think not having a street cutting right through there is a big deal, right? They've got 2 streets cutting through there, a train, which causes a lot of headaches and issues. They've got some parking issues there, but more perceived, where in the winter, you don't want to park in the big parking lot and walk all the way down and get a coffee, right? So what this project's designed around is a lot of places that I've visited and spent time into, like the mountain villages and Telluride, Colorado, things like downtown Disney. If you've been to downtown Disney, you really got to get people parked, and then they can walk around and they can enjoy everything. They can enjoy a cocktail, they can enjoy a nice dinner, and they can enjoy some shopping. And having the hotel is a big component of it, having the people living there to support those small businesses. Downtown's got 64 units, I think it is, at Granite Shores. And then there's, I think, 25 or 27 across the street. But you really have to bring in a higher income demographic to be able to support those local shops and stuff. And that's the intent here too. But I think the biggest takeaway is amenities, and then get to the site, get out of your car, and have access to all of that, right? And so we've got covered parking here. Phase 2 will bring a parking structure. And in addition, we're still going to do our car share program that nobody seems to believe in for the tenants, and we're going to bring all kinds of other great public amenities here. But you got to get them there and have a reason to get there. Whereas downtown, you got streets to cross, you got a perceived traffic issue down there, right? I mean, people just say that it's a headache. I'm not going down there. You got the train you got to deal with. So it's a challenge for downtown Elk River. And then everybody under the sun has their own idea of what to do with their own property, which makes it tough too.
I can tell you, I like the concept, the idea. The part I struggle with is the parking. And in the future, I know you had the traffic study done. So thank you for that. I wasn't on council these past 4 years, but I will say, I understand what the other council members are saying. I've worked in engineering for a long time. And as much as I would say, and I was a drafter, if I could say, yeah, I'm gonna do this and write it down, my engineers would have said, get out of here. I mean, they're visual. A lot of people are, and until, you see something on paper in front of you, I mean, I can see why they'd have a hard time signing off on it.
Hey, and I guess I'm just trying to clarify, we're just extending the parking garage here, right? And so, from the standpoint of that's the biggest change to the footprint, right? I think everything else is just some cosmetic stuff. We're just extending the parking garage. I fully intend to meet the code. And if it's really, if we're not here to determine if the project looks good or not, right? Or we like the way it lays out, right? I don't think that's the council's job. I think it's the council's job to make sure it adheres to the codes, right? And if the code says, Jesse, you need 121 spots, and I'm saying we will absolutely have that for you, council. Please understand that. And again, recognize we're sort of in between a lot of different things. I know Dan commented that the city's always had this 1-to-1 ratio for apartments, right? But we've always presented under a PUD and a mixed use development. So I apologize if I wasn't clear on that, Dan, but my team had never seen that anywhere in the documentation, but regardless, that's all the past, right? I'm just asking if we can please move forward, knowing we'll meet every one of those 18 conditions, which besides the change to the parking structure doesn't, which I would argue that isn't really material change, but then why would it be denied down the road? And so if that's the case, why are we denying it now? Or why would we deny it now? Not saying it is being denied.
I hear your points and I think they're good points in a way. Our job role is also make sure the businesses that come into this community are successful. Because if you're not successful, you walk away from your property and then the city's left dealing with it. So there is a responsibility to make sure that this is going to be a successful project for the community, not just for you, but I mean, obviously we want all businesses that come into this community to be successful. But it's also, how is it going to function? Is it going to perform the way it needs to? Otherwise, right now, vacant land is more valuable than a building that doesn't work.
Sure, council member. I would just push back and say, obviously, I'm trusting a team of architects. We've done our market studies, multiples, including one by HUD. We've also done a market study by HUD, which is much more stringent. I've been in business for over 20 years since I got out of the military in multiple different fronts, right? Construction, residential, commercial, and restaurant, right? And so, changing and adding the 60 stalls is not, I don't believe, a determination on whether or not successful. Adding the 60 stalls would meet the city code requirements, and respectfully, I don't think the city can deny something based on they don't think it'll work, right? How many projects, if the city was doing that, how many projects would be denied because we don't think it's a good business? But
what is the AMI then?
AMI,
Or what is it's HUD housing that you're building, right?
we're going to apply through a HUD loan under the Green Energy Program or the Green Building Program, correct? And I've worked with Berkadia, one of the largest HUD lenders in the nation, that's submitted our concept narrative.
And how many units are going to be HUD compliant?
Well, the entire project's HUD compliant under the commercial application.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're not doing low income type of housing. No, it's not TIF or low income HUD. It's not affordability. It's a market rate HUD financed under their green building side of things.
Okay, you could tell we all look like we haven't heard this.
Yeah. I was thinking it was affordable.
No. My goal is to bring market rate, high end, high end units to the.
So it's a financing option that they offer you as a developer.
Correct. Yep. And we've been through the entire concept.
What did you call it? Green?
It's their green building program.
Yeah, it's for housing that does, they perform projects. They have to meet a number of criterias, which is exterior envelope. They have to meet an energy code, really high standards between heating and electrical usage. A lot of those things. I'm working on one of those projects right now, personally, or with my career being in construction. So,
okay.
Yeah, but that's an affordable project.
Yeah, still the same requirements, very stringent. They also require vetted property management companies with years of HUD experience. So, again, as I've commented in the past, building this high, I believe builds a safer project because of some of the tougher building codes you have to meet. In the same respect with the HUD financing, it brings in a much more stringent due diligence on the financial piece of it, and that will be coming. You'll have the HUD pre-approval as part of the final approval. So to the point of making sure it's successful, and I'm happy to share market studies with the city. We provided parking study for the city that the M1 district's being based on. We provided all of our geotechnical engineer. I'm happy to share the market studies for the city too. There's a huge demand and a growing demand in this area to provide high level housing. And I believe this project fits that and would attract new residents to the city to support all the businesses.
So when you say affordable, not affordable, but high level housing, but you said it's market rate. So
we're on the high end of the market rate. So we'll be coming in at the top end of the market rate.
Okay.
But we'll be delivering the nicest units and the most amenities, especially as we develop out that park area and bring additional space. And where else can you go where you can live somewhere and walk down and shop there, right? And as we continue to develop and have a hotel and multiple restaurants on site, it'll be a destination place.
I will comment, I did appreciate that you do have some 3-bedroom options. That was nice to see. And I
Thank you, Mayor.
think that will be a set you aside.
It's unfortunate that we're turning into a rental nation as a custom home builder for over 20 years, but that is kind of where we're going. And there is a huge demand for it. The market study done by HUD was even better than the private one, which we were all shocked at, my finance team and all of us. So this area is in high demand, and it's bringing an affluent base, that are looking to move out of the cities. But, with that comes the need to have bigger units, nicer units, amenities, things like that.
Other comments? Questions for Jesse, questions for staff?
Mayor, I just want to make a comment. I get a little concerned, Jesse, when you mention, something like the West End in St. Louis Park. I've been there. I know a lot of places have come and go, and I just want to make sure that what you're thinking of bringing in here is going to be successful, because as Michelle stated, yes, you want to be successful, but us as a city and not having vacated buildings or anything left, because it can happen. I just want to make sure that, you're thinking of the best to bring in here, and it is successful. I know there's no guarantee, of course, but I always get concerned when you say shopping and this and that. What kind of shopping? A lot of stores are closing because we're all on Amazon or whatnot. So I get a little concerned. I definitely want commercial in here. I'm not saying no, not at all. Absolutely, we need it, but just to be cautious when thinking of what you're going to bring it in.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big pieces of phase one, not going too big, right? I mean, it is 12,000 square feet, which affords the opportunity for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses and a lot of service-related businesses. I can't speak publicly, but I already have probably 80% at least out. Again, nothing's signed until we get approvals and get further along. But I know a lot of business colleagues in this area that want to be in a place like this. And so phase one sort of proves the point. We'll bring that back to you guys. It'll be a huge success and bringing a lot of tax base for the city. And then in phase two, we'll continue to expand on that. And then, the system sort of feeds itself as it gets to be a destination place, right? Where more people want to live there because now they can just walk downstairs and get food and shopping and all that stuff. So, but the market always usually finds a way. And I agree. The West End in St. Louis Park it came out with a huge bang. It kind of stumbled for a while, but when it did become successful is when they started to get enough apartments there to support it. Now you see how many apartments around that. We're certainly not doing anything to that scale here. We really want to make this more like a Main Street type of deal, similar to Stillwater. But you do need to have enough units there and energy and support. And that is the goal, that will balance the commercial with the apartments and then mix in the amenities as we go. But you're on the river, and why not take advantage of that, right? The river is a huge amenity that people love to enjoy, and adding some really high-end amenities there, like gazebos and picnic areas, things that are safe. I think I've told the council, part of our pro forma includes security on the premise. People just want to go somewhere they can feel safe and enjoy their lives, and that's what we're trying to bring to the community here.
Other questions, comments? Jesse, if I were to ask you, would you bring back a visual picture and drawing of what it's supposed to look like? Is that on the table for you, or are you absolutely against it?
Can I bring that to you in 3 weeks, Mayor? Let's make that a condition. And I'm not, I don't want to sound insensitive here, but I mean, the reality is it will take multiple weeks to get that updated, right? Which puts us, if this has to go back to planning commission, I mean, this derails the entire thing for 2 months, probably at best. I'm not sure what the schedule's like, but
Mayor,
But it doesn't,
this wouldn't necessarily need to go back to planning commission if he submits something that's responsive to their condition. Then it's council's discretion.
So with that said, Jesse, what would your answer be then?
I would request it gets approved tonight, Mayor, and I will withdraw the application if you don't like this picture I submit to you. Trust me a little, and then let's take a leap of faith together. But I will get you an updated plan within a month, if not sooner. And if you don't like that, I'll withdraw my application. I'm a man of my word.
I mean, when I go through this, I would agree that you can fix the windows, as I said. To me, it's what it looks like when we asked you to provide it at the planning commission, with parking. I was in the meeting. You said, yep, I can do it. But you know, and I don't want to tie you to the last time, but you said, yep, I can do it to a lot of things. And then we would get down to the wire, and then you would kind of badger us for not seeing your vision. And right now is our only time where we have the most discretion to ask questions and make sure this is a good product. We want you to succeed. So as you asked us questions, that's my question to you.
Yeah, and so Mayor, my understanding from Planning Commission to here is it was a week time difference, right? And so the city council is the big sort of like rubber stamp, right? Even though you guys can cancel this. So I was never under the understanding that I was going to go back and try to get this updated in a matter of days and resubmit it. Nor have I done that in any other developments in any other cities. It's submit the concept, come back with the preliminary, have the preliminary approved with conditions, and then bring in the final plans. And so while I understand that there is a parking garage here, again, I just asked, if I brought that back, would the project be approved? Or would it be denied because you didn't like how it looked? And if the answer is you didn't like how it looked, that's one thing. But if the answer is, hey, you got the unit to be approved, I'm just asking for council to recognize that we can get to that.
My answer would be, if you're meeting what the requirements are, it would be hard pressed for us to say no.
Correct. And so that's why.
So, but right now, you're not showing me that you're meeting it. You're telling me, but you're not showing me.
Well, I'm taking, and the approval is a legal obligation if you don't. You know, that approval that you guys would vote on today with those stipulations is a legal obligation to meet them. So I think we're really, you know, I don't think there's a single difference in my opinion. The city attorney can comment on that, but coming back and showing it or agreeing to meet it is both a legal requirement. So.
Any comment, Dave?
I don't know if I understand the question, Mayor. If you put conditions on it and he did not satisfy those conditions, you could not issue the building permit because the conditions were not satisfied. But it's not a legal requirement that he satisfy them. He could not satisfy them, and then you would not issue a building permit for it.
And so if the conditions are met and it's approved, I'm asking you guys to approve it, understanding that I will meet those conditions. And it is a legally binding requirement of mine.
But I think you can also agree that, to Ryan's point that he said, and your architects fixed 3 things. But to hit what he was pointing out is just that there was a large list of other things that if they're in their drawing and making changes, they probably could have tackled those things. True. And corrected them as you submitted it. But buttoned everything up as you.
I think there was an opportunity. Again, this is their 3rd application, and just being cognitive of cost, not having a clear direction 100%. I was just trying to keep it super simple. Here's why we're denied, fix these, right? Those other conditions, you know, it didn't say denied because of these conditions, right? But
there was a lot of talk about those issues, and that wasn't in our 3 things that we denied. Sure. But you sat in front of us for a long time, and we went back and forth with a lot of those issues.
Well, and again, Mayor, under the PUD development, some of that stuff was not set in stone, right? As it is with the M1. And so there wasn't clear understanding of what needed to be met there. You know, could I have added more brick and stone? Sure, but maybe it wasn't needed because again, it's a PUD development. There wasn't a specific requirement on brick and stone. So I was trying to meet the requirements at the time that we were denied for. And again, respectfully, Councilmember Dunlap's not approving it regardless if I meet those conditions. He's already made that statement. So
I don't think you understood my statement. I'm saying that the conditions that are in here are not everything that I would say is a condition for approval. There are parking requirements in here that refer to M1. We haven't discussed M1 yet. M1 at the time of this application didn't exist. So this was submitted under PUD. and it's not meeting the zoning requirements.
So
Now, and I completely understand your point that a PUD is different. We can go above and beyond or change those zoning requirements. But why? Why would we? I mean,
So-
that's the question I keep coming back to. And to be honest, wouldn't you rather have us give you that feedback right now instead of at the final plat?
Well, I think your feedback and your vote for and approving this is the feedback, Jesse. You need to meet these requirements so that it can be approved. That is the feedback I'm asking for, Councilmember Dunlap. And this was on the agenda for after the M1 district. You had requested it be moved ahead of it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but if it was, it may be something that costs a lot of time and money for a guy just like, I'm just like you guys. I don't understand why, if this meets the M1 district that's about to be approved, it seems awfully crazy to think we're going to deny this so you can come back under the M1 district, especially considering you moved this ahead of that.
I
So-
think if we adopted the M1, you would have to reapply.
Mayor, you can still act on this application as a standalone application.
Okay.
Even after the M1 is approved.
Okay.
So to clarify, it would be approved under PUD
Correct.
with M1-like conditions.
Right.
That's
Is
the
it-
thing that I think.
May I request from the city attorney, can I ask not for a vote until after the discussion of the M1 district and see if that passes? Is there anything preventing that from happening?
The council set the agenda, they can, they have to follow the agenda they've set unless they vote to change that agenda. So you
So-
can ask if the
Yeah.
council wants to
I-
move it, they can move.
So I would just say for everybody's sake, why don't we table this, re-put this after 4.2, let you guys figure out the M1 district. If I do have to resubmit, that would also be clarity for me as a developer to understand what am I resubmitting under. And you guys can continue the discussion. I'll patiently wait. And I think that allows everybody to have clarity on what this would be approved with or without.
Council? Thoughts on that?
I guess if that'll clarify and confirm things, then yes, I would agree to do that.
Thank you, council member.
Any other comments?
So I can just, because I think there was some insinuation there that the reason I think it's appropriate to discuss it in this order is because M1 didn't exist when this was submitted. And this is the order that the planning commission discussed it in. I don't think there's nothing wrong with us considering M1-like issues for this development. The reason that I think it's more logical to discuss it in the way that it was submitted is because I don't want to discuss two things at once. I don't want to discuss where we think the M1 should be and your application.
I agree, council member. So wouldn't it be prudent to wait until you guys discuss the M1 and see if that's approved? Then we don't even have to discuss the PUD portion.
I don't think it is because you submitted as PUD.
Correct.
You could have waited, right? You could have.
Respectfully, council member, I did email the city. I've waited. You guys had this on the agenda and took it off, and so there's real cost involved, right? I mean, there's real cost involved to continue to wait. And I had waited months and months. And again, I don't want to point to conspiracies, but Adam, I emailed him and he said, we don't know when that's going to be on the agenda. We don't know when the M1's coming. So then I submit under PUD and then magically the M1's back up. So it's just like, I'm a developer, guys. I'm just trying to get clarity on what to do. And if we met the 3 reasons for denial, why can't we move forward with these conditions? And if we have an M1 district that's about to get approved, why can't we do that first and then find out? And then why can't we approve it understanding that? I mean,
but
it seems like we're getting into semantics over verbiage here.
Well,
Any
Mayor,
comments?
yeah, just to be clear, this application is a PUD application, and regardless of what happens tonight on the M1, if you're gonna process this application, it's gonna be under the PUD application. You can table it and handle it later, it would still be a PUD application, unless he resubmits a new application as an M1 application if M1 passes.
Because he applied as a PUD.
Because he applied as a PUD, it has to be processed from start to finish as a PUD.
Mayor, also just for clarification, the reason this was on the agenda first at the planning commission was they already held the public hearing in April to consider the M1 district. So then that was no longer a public hearing. When this came to the planning commission, it was a public hearing, which are held before any other
First.
planning items. So
But it wouldn't have changed if the order were different at the planning commission because Jesse applied under the PUD.
correct. And Mayor, when staff was reviewing the application, we reviewed it in the context that the planning commission was discussing proposed standards for the M1 district, which all those discussions were based on the prior discussions of this application and the other applications, and looking at the other apartment buildings in Otsego, plus the comprehensive plan discussion. So all of that has informed how we got to this point.
So I've just been trying to follow the guidance of the commissions and the staff. And we run into roadblocks here with council 2 times now, and I'm really hoping we're not at a third because, again, we're just following the recommendations of where the city's going, trying to be in line with where the city's going. And it would feel really upsetting to be punished because we did that, but now being said, well, that isn't quite done yet, right? So we've got the conditions. They're a legal agreement between the city and myself to meet those conditions. And so I just ask you guys to please recognize the struggles here and let's put this behind us and allow me to meet those conditions, which are going to be in line with your M1 district and well under your ability to do under a PUD.
Madam Mayor.
Right.
Maybe a question for Ron and Dan. In past projects, have we got presentations like this or applications that are not quite finished, where the drawing maybe isn't done, or what the council's looking at has been approved?
So, Mayor, every application is different. It's common that we apply conditions to any approval. I was joking with Councilmember Lund at the Planning Commission. We aim for 10 conditions, and don't get concerned until there's more than 30. So, it's typical to have conditions. It's just a level of degree to what the conditions are and the council's comfort level with those. So if the council believes, the condition says adjust the lot lines to make 70 feet meet requirements, add some additional landscaping to this yard adjacent to this roadway, etc. It's not going to substantially change the character of the project. Add some brick to this, add the garage stalls. It's the council's decision whether that's going to potentially substantially change what's in front of you and whether you want to see that before you act on it tonight, or if you're fine proving it with conditions, knowing it's coming back for final plat. And then they'd have to meet that condition.
But the concern would be, again, in my position is that if I'm not seeing what you're presenting, you're telling me all this, I'm 100% sure you're going to be complaining or yelling at me if I then deny it because you're going to say, I don't have any vision. Well, I don't see what I'm supposed to be approving tonight. I see something that isn't what you were told at the planning commission to do.
Right. And so, Mayor, that's where I'm asking you to understand that it's not, I can't change that, right? I mean, that's the condition is an agreement. And so
Okay.
I will be bringing back the parking, and that's why I was asking if the parking stalls were there, would you deny the project? Because if the answer is no, then why deny it now if you know that I have to do that, right? And so that's the part that I'm struggling to understand.
But I don't know that I can trust that you're going to do.
Well, you're not trusting me, Mayor. You're trusting that the city's process, which has been followed a number of times, is legit.
It's also setting a precedent for
right.
every other project after
Like,
this.
I think the
Jesse, I'm sure you're a
precedent-
great guy. This is what I'm tasked with tonight. That's what I'm struggling with.
Well, Dan just commented that unless you get over 30, they don't start to get worried. I mean, the precedent
Well,
that time and time again.
This is a lot of parking congestion over in that area anyway, so there's a lot of concern towards that. And you can appreciate that, I'm sure.
Oh, we paid for the parking study. That's the M1's being based on.
Sure.
$5,000 or $6,000.
And I think what I worry about is setting a precedence. So I guess I would make a motion to deny based on, I guess, not seeing everything. And having a visual.
Mayor, although you don't have a second yet, staff's recommendation would be rather than deny at this point, you would table with direction back to address the building materials, address the parking, and any of the other listed conditions that you feel are significant that you want to see before acting upon the request. Okay. We want to be sure that the developer has adequate time to respond to any concerns of the council before going to the step of denying a request.
And how much time would he get then if we take that action?
So you can table it till the next meeting or as soon as he's able to resubmit information. The city has until August 5th to make a yes or no decision.
Okay.
So if this is tabled, may I mean, is there clarification? Because last time I thought it was denied for those 3 reasons. So if
We'll
we're gonna
give you
get it tabled tonight,
clarification.
what is the clarification that we need to see? Because if you're asking for a landscaping plan, lighting plans and stuff that's gonna be well above the $500,000 I've invested. I mean, at what point do I stop and say there's other communities and towns that I can invest this money in? Again, I'm asking you guys as council members to understand and support a local small developer. You know, I don't know when the
But we
next
haven't
council
treated
meeting is.
every developer the same.
I think you should
large-
prioritize local developments. Why wouldn't you? Isn't that in the city comprehensive plan? Why can't you support a local developer over a national developer? But regardless of
But we're
that,
looking at land use, so
it meets the land
Mayor,
use requirements.
the city treats all development applications
The
the
same.
same regardless of the size or portfolio of the app.
So when is the next meeting for council, Dan?
Next council meeting would be June 9th and 23rd.
Can I bring it to the June 9th meeting? When would you need that by?
We would need it by Tuesday, the 3rd.
And is the only concern, Mayor and council, to see the parking structure so that we can amend that and get that taken care of quickly? Because
would-
the other stuff is,
I would allow everyone to answer that.
yes, that's my request, please. If we can just get clarification on that so that we can have a reasonable, so I can bring this back to you to show you the visual changes as we work through some of the other stuff.
I guess I'm not gonna go ahead and say yes. I mean, I'll consider it, of course, but I agree with what Ryan was saying. There's a lot of stuff to look at and consider, but I'll consider it for sure.
So what are the conditions that you would like to see? I think is
Well-
the question.
I guess the parking for sure, and seeing the visual of that, I would like to, what Ryan said about the other conditions, have a chance to understand that.
And-
For myself.
I would just add, because I think, I understand why you want our list right now and you want us to be crystal clear. I can completely respect that. But the problem is, once you change the design, something else might change, right? That's the thing I think I'm hearing that we're struggling
We're
with.
struggling with that because it changes.
So I
Talking
can't
going
give you,
south.
I mean, I gave you a list of 3 before, right? And from where I'm sitting, one of those was addressed. And if you change the parking situation, it's gonna change some other things. And so I can't tell you definitively. I can tell you, I would like to approve this application. I do believe in mixed use. I think that is a good idea. It's a good design. But I also have a responsibility to ensure that the ordinances are being followed, and that's gonna be my standard. If you can meet the ordinances, I don't see any reason I could deny you.
So I think for myself, I would like to see the parking being addressed, the underground or covered parking, however, that's not underground, but it's enclosed parking. Seeing that and how that ripple effect is between that, the structure as a whole, how it's affecting the lot, and then if there's any other ripple effects that occur to that parking lot that is caused by extending that out 60 feet. Are you going to shorten the sidewalk or that boulevard area? How are you going to adjust for all that? That would make sense. I'm assuming that the tower portion wouldn't change for the apartment buildings, but if it does, that we would need to see that change, I guess. So whatever changes are that are are basically a result of that parking and in fitting in that parking was what we would need to see. And then the materials too on the exterior facade and showing that where you're going to make that attempt to meet our criteria.
So illustrative. updates on the
Illustrative, yeah,
plans to
yeah.
show
you-
you.
So you could
how it will-
probably just do like elevations
Sure.
and color it up as this is brick and this is, you know,
Yeah, we'll have the architects update the exterior elevation.
Yeah.
the parking
Mayor.
garage.
So, you know, the conditions outlined in the report to the council are the roadmap to the developer as to what needs to be addressed. So the actionable items in that would be revise the plans prior to application, such that exterior finish materials for proposed building comply with the zoning ordinance, number 3. Number 4, developer shall document that the building setback from the north line, fire access and circulation north of the building complies with the fire code.
7. I think it's the next one.
7, the submitted plan shall be revised prior to application for final plat approval, address the following off-street parking requirements, minimum 309 off-street parking spaces, minimum 121 off-street parking spaces with an enclosed structure attached to the principal building, minimum 121 stalls dedicated for use by the residents of the multiple family dwelling units. Those would be the ones I would see as the extraordinary conditions that have been discussed at length.
And I would just clarify for number 7, not proof of parking. I understand you said that proof of parking is no longer on the table, but the plan that was submitted to us has 30% proof of parking. So unshade that portion, right?
Yeah, because you kept, it's gray on there.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, right.
The condition was listed as a minimum of 309 off-street parking spaces shall be constructed. So
Right.
And that's based on the M1 YZ calculation, right?
Correct. Because otherwise the number would have been
339.
higher.
With no requirement that there be enclosed. Right.
But as that was discussed at the planning commission, all of the other apartment buildings have an enclosed space that matches the apartment building. Not studios. Studios are not included. Because I believe Commissioner Strateski mentioned that and King Canyon.
So Dan, do you know, did we require that as part of their PUD?
Yes.
I believe that's why they mentioned that, because they said everyone else has the same. So this would,
And that, Mayor, that requirement also came out of the 2018 multiple family housing study, and it was referenced in the comprehensive plan update.
The 2023 update? Okay.
so we would need to make a formal table.
Correct.
And then Jesse would pick the date, I guess, when he's planning to bring this back. But he needs to come back before August 5th. Did I write that?
Correct.
Yep.
And that doesn't need to go to planning commission, Dan? This would just come
Mayor, it
directly.
would not need to go to the planning commission unless the council sends it. And as long as, from staff's perspective, as long as he's addressing the conditions that are outlined, the planning commission already voted to recommend approval with those conditions, so
Right.
they should be satisfied.
And so I will just say for me, and I don't know if this is helpful to you or not, but if you do it under our current ordinances or whatever comes out of the M1 discussion, because I'm not a fan of the building height, but I don't know how that discussion is going to go yet.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Right? We need a, is there any discussion with Ryan's comment further on that? I mean, we went round and round with building height for a long time. So. Any other comments on building? Oh, sorry.
No, Mayor, just a reminder, there was a motion that never received a second, just acknowledging whether or not
Oh.
that
I'm sorry, yes.
failed due to lack of
Sorry.
a second before we.
Then
move on,
we
so.
went off on discussing. So,
Or if you want to revoke your motion, Dave, I don't know if that's a possibility for the person to do that, if it just fails because of lack of a second.
Well, first of all, I think the motion was to deny it and there was no second. So either Corey could renew that motion if he wants to, or if there's no second, then it would die for lack of a second.
It can die.
Fair enough. Just wanted that for the record.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry. I think once he said it, then we were trying to figure out how we could Mr. Hartung some direction.
Mayor, one additional comment. You've thrown around the August 5th date, I believe. The last council meeting before that would be July 28th, so you may want to put that in there so that you're not calling a special meeting just for this occasion.
Thank you.
You have that noted, Audra. All right. We've discussed a lot. Jesse's been here in front of us for a long time. We've talked about tabling this. We've given him suggestions. Is there any more discussion, or is there a motion to proceed? So Mr. Hartung has some direction on this.
Mayor, can I just clarify, would the motion be to table this to the July 28th meeting?
I would intend to bring this back on the,
I
One
think he wanted
Friday.
sooner.
yep.
I think we can allow him to have that time until the 28th, until he was ready. I think that would be maybe,
But he needs to know what the deadlines are to meet the packet requirements.
Yeah, I've got the understanding of the timeline. So if it's tabled till the 28th, my intention is to bring it back to the next one. So as long as we can hopefully table it until the next meeting, that would be great.
Well, if the next meeting, I mean, in that case, I think that the motion should just be to set it for that meeting, and then if it has to be continued again at that meeting, that'll be fine, but at least the public and everyone will know the exact date that it's scheduled for.
And does Mr. Hartung have to do any specific requirements if he doesn't meet that deadline for 2 weeks from now? What is, I
No,
want to make sure he's clear with what his expectations are to contact staff.
right. So the meeting, the 60-day rule would require it be done before August 5th, and the last scheduled meeting would be the 28th of July.
Okay,
But you can schedule it for the meeting on the 9th of July.
June.
9th of June, sorry. And if he doesn't bring it back then, you know, it can be bumped to a future meeting as long as it's the 28th or before.
And that would simply, Mayor, that would simply involve staff putting a memo into the packet saying we did not receive the plans. We communicated with the developer, whatever the situation, requesting that the council again continue it to the next meeting. And that would likely be a consent item at that point.
is
Not
that,
to throw a wrench in this, sorry.
no,
If he doesn't bring it back, it automatically gets approved, correct?
Mayor,
not yet.
the intent would be at the meeting on July 28th. If he hasn't responded, then staff would have it presented as a discussion item to either approve with conditions or to deny it for non-compliance with the intent of the PUD district.
everybody good with that and understands it? Yep.
And the reason that we're saying that he's gonna come back and have it on the schedules or have it on the agenda is just so we're doing that announcement in advance.
Mayor, so the public is aware that the item will be discussed and potentially acted upon by the council at that date.
And before we make any motions, Ryan, to your point, you have issues with the building height and you're referring to it under the PUD. We haven't obviously discussed the M1
Right.
district. Because obviously it wouldn't fit under that.
Right, and certainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current requirements are, or the current maximum under our zoning ordinances would be 48 feet, 4 stories. And that's consistent with the other developments in the area, or the other buildings that have been developed in Otsego, correct?
It did feel at the planning commission that we were interchanging current proposed when we discussed this item. And that's me sitting in the audience, I would say. So. I think that's a fair comment to make, Ryan. Because as we're applying parking stuff to something that we haven't even approved yet, and we're talking about building heights to something we haven't approved yet also.
And just like if, if Mr. Hartung's plans change and things move around, our ordinances might change and move things around as well. So, you know, I certainly appreciate your comment that, you know, that I think the M1 discussion is going to be helpful for me too. So.
All right.
Just to be clear, and I think everyone is clear, but this application is a PUD application.
It's a
So you are-
PUD,
You are not bound by the
Anyone
M1
is-
standards.
correct?
Okay.
So he knows by submitting it with a PUD, he was going way above what we were even allowing under the current. And you're aware of that, Jesse, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. We're looking for a motion. Anyone have one? I will make a motion to table this application to our June 9th meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have to spell out the conditions?
I believe Jesse has heard them. Audra's typing away, and you can call Dan in the morning.
I understand.
All right, there's a motion by Jessica, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, moving on to item 4.2, which is zoning ordinance mixed use M1 district. Dan,
Mayor, thank you. Please try and forget anything you discussed in the last.
okay,
Start with clean slate. So the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2023 and included a mixed use land use category. Its establishment of this designation was based on the multiple family housing study done in 2018 that looked at areas that would be appropriate for multiple family uses within the city, as well as looked at opportunities for mixed use development where apartments could be utilized to provide market support for designated commercial areas. Those areas were concentrated primarily around the County Road 39 and Highway 101 interchange, as well as along County Road 19 north of the city of Albertville. What was outlined as part of the multiple family housing study and the comprehensive plan was that a new zoning district would be established to address mixed use zoning districts versus using the case by case approach of a planned unit development district. The intent would be to make these, as I said before, not referring to that, commercial zoning districts that allowed for apartment uses. That would be done as a conditional use permit. So there would be, I have to probably share it, sorry. That might fault.
It won't let you share.
Let's see.
we're just looking at ourselves.
There we go. There we go. Thank you. I thought Adam kicked me. Sorry.
There.
So, the intent would be to, through that conditional use permit process, establish very clear performance standards for allowing multiple family units within these developments. The lot requirements and setbacks are basically set up to be the same as the commercial zoning districts in terms of requiring 30 feet front yard setback, 10 feet side, 20 feet rear, and a 35-foot setback if you're abutting a residential use or zoning district. Building requirements similarly would be the same in terms of the commercial building materials, where there is flexibility sought would be for the height of the building. Again, trying to create that opportunity for density to support commercial areas. Looking at the Highway 101 corridor as unique from other areas of the city, especially at County Road 39. But allowing a building height up to 75 feet is what the Planning Commission settled on. More to that later. But then other areas of this district would be limited to 48 feet in height. Specific to the multiple family standards, 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit, so basically 43 units per acre. To address the situation that came up with one of the prior applications involving the Richard Lefebvre property north of the Otsego waterfront development, where they were proposing a 7 or 8 story building directly adjacent to Highway or County Road 42 with single family homes across the street. What the Planning Commission recommended and developed was kind of a stepped building requirement. So the first 100 feet of the property adjacent to County Road 42, the building would be limited to 3 stories or 35 feet, same as the commercial development to the south. So there's not necessarily a change in the character of that use, but then it would allow some of that density to be stacked closer to what would be the future Quad A Avenue, up to 52 feet, which is basically 4 stories for a mixed use building. Then on the other side of Quad A Avenue, adjacent to Highway 101, that would be the 75-foot building. So you're moving the intensity of the use away from the residential areas such that when the property was guided commercial before, this is the same type of building that could be constructed in that area directly adjacent to 42. What the Planning Commission also raised was, okay, what about the areas along County Road 19? So the same step requirement was put in, 35 feet if it's abutting the residential zoning district that allows single or 2 family uses. But then that area only goes up to 48 feet. So the building directly adjacent to County Road 19, for example, can be 4 stories high, the same basically as Parkview Retail or Parkview Grand or Village structures. The other requirements were that is if it's abutting a residential district that allows single or 2 family dwellings, there's a floor area requirement where the square footage of the building can't exceed 70% of the lot area. That's working to control the bulk of the building and the intensity of the use. That 35-foot setback area between the residential use and the mixed use building has to be landscaped, like a buffer yard requirement with evergreens and materials that will screen the 2 activities between each other. And then the final requirement was the 2 stalls per unit. One must be enclosed within a structure attached to the principal building, and that only applied to units with 1 or more bedrooms. So taking out the efficiency or the studio apartments where price and affordability is more of a consideration. So this goes back to prior discussions regarding the Mississippi Landings project as well as other projects within the city, dealing with Guardian Angels in the Village being 2 of the taller buildings. The Wyndham Hotel is also in the scale similar to the Guardian Angels building. Because all the other buildings have used pitched roofs, the height is technically measured to the midpoint of the pitched roof, because as that structure leans back, its visual effect to someone viewing it from the street is lessened, whereas a flat roof is basically a horizontal plane or vertical plane parallel to the roadway, so it has more of an impact. Where the Planning Commission looked at this is they realized that other structures have basically been limited to 4 stories in the city, but they felt that, again, Highway 101 being a unique opportunity. You also have the benefit that I've seen in other cities where if you put a tall structure directly adjacent to the freeway, it helps mitigate that freeway noise to the residential areas further set in. So that's a positive in that. They didn't want to deal with, the Planning Commission I'm referring to, didn't want to deal with pitched roof, flat roof, so they just capped it at a flat 75 feet. That basically allows for a 6-story building with the elevator, pantries, or and the mechanicals on the roof to be accommodated. This is just an illustration of that building height transition comment. We had the graphic on the left for the Planning Commission, and the engineers all said, well, why didn't you show it to plan view as well? So we put together this stripe drawing, the yellow area being the 3-story, 35-foot height, orange is 4 stories, 48 feet, and the red being 75 feet. So you can see that it's pushing that tallest structure all the way to 101 on the opposite side of that roadway. The same would apply looking at kind of the concept plans that have been developed for County Road 19 to have the frontage or the back edge roads with residential on the interior side and the commercial mixed use buildings out towards County Road 19. So there is still that stepping down of intensity and building height and building bulk. That's kind of a baseline recommendation of the comprehensive plan. Yep. So the property to the north of this was residential and allowed single or two family, then they'd have to provide that same transition coming south for that first 500 feet.
So it would really only back up the red to more to the south then.
Right, it pushed the red further south, correct. The property north of this is also guided for mixed use as well, but it's correct, yep. Yep, anywhere that you would have a mixed use M1 zoning district, but up to anything zoned R1 through R5, and that includes over across a roadway. So from the center line of Parish Avenue, for example, this requirement applies.
Which was our concerns when the LaFave
Correct.
application came in.
Because
For the LaFave property, I should say. It wasn't.
Yeah, you'll recall that they initially proposed it on that side, and then hearing the opposition to that, they proposed moving it to the other side of Guade, directly adjacent to 101, which was more acceptable. They still had other issues that caused that project not to move forward. And then the final issue was the off-street parking methodology. This came out of the 2023 application for Mississippi Landings, where they did a parking study and looked at various ways to accommodate for off-street parking analysis for mixed-use development. Because you don't want to take just, you've got 100 units, so you need 200 parking stalls for that. You've got 20,000 square feet of commercial, so you need 200 parking stalls for that, so you need 400. Because there is obviously offset peak days of the week and peak times within each day. So rather than cause a developer to construct more parking that's needed for the actual use of the property, it's better to kind of formalize how that can be staggered and offset. And that also benefits the city because you end up with less stormwater runoff, less stormwater facilities, etc. So this methodology was adapted from the city of Wayzata. It's a little bit different situation, given that Wayzata has on-street parking areas where they use this. They also have public parking facilities. But the theory is the same, that those parking stalls are allocated as part of their overall parking requirements as well. We've seen this methodology adopted in other communities now as well that we work for and has passed through their engineering planning staffs as an appropriate way to deal with mixed use development. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing that they opened April 21st to consider it. They tabled it to address that building height transition requirement. And we brought that back to them at their meeting last Monday. They were satisfied with that outcome after further discussion of it, and would recommend approval of the M1 district as presented.
All right. Thank you, Dan. All right, questions for staff? Comments about this? Corey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dan, so I don't know a ton about this, but so would mixed use, could a traditional commercial property come in and just put in commercial property, or would it have to be this combo platter, as they say, of apartment, retail?
Mayor, so the intent is it's a mixed use district. So it allows for standalone commercial buildings, standalone multiple family buildings, or a building that combines commercial and multiple family uses. So for example, you could develop on the LaFave property, an apartment building, a retail store, an office building. But it's the idea that all the uses are occurring within that designated area, not necessarily a single structure.
So you can't have one without the other.
Yes.
More or less. Okay. Is this gonna spur growth, do you think? Like commercial wise and retail and restaurants that people want?
Mayor, so the theory behind the promotion of mixed use is that with the changes in retail and office now since Amazon and COVID pandemic, you need to have more density, more households adjacent to commercial to support it. So what this is doing is taking what we had as the land use plan that had nodes of commercial development around the major interchanges with stepping back, multiple family or townhouse stepping back to single family. It's loading more potential households into those commercial areas to then drive market interest and support for those commercial businesses. So you're trading some commercial floor space, but for the opportunity to make the commercial that does develop more sustainable.
You have the map, Dan, I could talk to you about, where this would absolutely, so we talked about 19.
Mm.
We talked about, north of the Wyndham. Mr. Hartong's property. Do you have a map that you could pull up just so everybody's aware of?
Yep.
What
So-
we're talking?
It's basically the area west of Highway 101, north of the Otsego waterfront development, north of the Wyndham.
Mhm,
It's the Otsego waterfront district proposal.
mhm.
The area where the village apartment is, and then the lots north of that as part of the PUD district for Great River Center established in 2006, designated that as a mixed-use village area. That's how that apartment building was allowed into that PUD district. The west side of the VFW soccer fields was guided for this mixed use as a way to kind of put a transition between commercial fronting to Quam Avenue, then some form of higher density residential transitioning back to the single family that's in Emerson Point or the future potential development of the DNY property. Then the only other area would be on the County Road 19 corridor. You've got the Slavic property, basically west of Sunray Farms and Dewar Creek, and then the northwest corner of County Road 19 and 70th Street, which was the Kurtz property, I believe, where it's transitioning from what is already designated for mixed use in Kittredge Crossings across to County Road 19 with commercial on that highway frontage.
Thank you. I think it's good when everyone sees the visual of where this is actually happening.
And Mayor, a landowner could come in and request an amendment to the comprehensive plan to designate that for mixed use at some point, but that would have to be obviously evaluated by the planning commission and council, kind of in the context of the city's overall plan, as well as the specific area that they're proposing.
Right, because I mean, obviously, as we've heard, the developers want those commercial spaces to grow, but by requesting it just somewhere that doesn't make sense, you're not getting that any people coming to it. It's just gonna be just the people that live there that they go to a little coffee shop or whatever it may be. All right, other questions from council regarding this? Yes, right. So Ryan, I have one question for you. Can you give me an example of where you talked about that Ingert store and, what city? Okay, again, I'm a visual person, so I just wanna, well, give me that example if you, but okay. And your comment then about making it equal, I think our concern was, or well, I guess but the planning commission's concern off 19 was that you don't have 101. So by putting a huge tall building, it very much would seem out of place since County Road 19 is not at all comparable to 101. If we were talking about along 94, I think that would be a different discussion. But there was the talk about, if you're living in those homes and you see this huge building plopped there, did it seem a little out of place? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying you thought it should be the 75 feet on that side. I'm sorry. Okay, I missed, and I was just like, that would look terrible. Yes. Yeah. The shadowing, the height of things. Based on all of the other buildings are at grade. And they're building then, they're retaining walls up to the structure, so you are taking the first floor for parking. I guess maybe on the west side of the city, you could, Ron's, the engineer is giving me the shake that yes, we could dig under, but on the east, you have to be at grade for especially those properties.
Yeah, that was $60,000 a stall cost that I was throwing out there. I thought, for whatever reason, I thought this was below grade. It's actually on grade, so that's a different price point. But yeah, when you're talking
Water
about,
table.
yeah, you have a water table, that's why you
Yeah.
can't do it near the river.
Next to the Mississippi.
So I think what we're seeing in Minneapolis and St. Paul, we saw a huge exodus of a lot of businesses because they couldn't get people to come downtown or go downtown to work. And you're seeing this huge rush to try to convert these existing buildings downtown St. Paul and Minneapolis to contain more housing. So we naturally have the housing around us to support businesses. What we're trying to do is balance that immediately around those businesses and the mixed use. I think along 101, if you are allowing for a few taller structures, it's going to be soil dependent and how tall you can really go in those areas. You have a little bit of a ravine that to deal with. It dips down. It doesn't go up, it goes down. So you have like an elevation difference as well. So you have the parking condition and then you have, where it's going to drive that first floor to be really, a combination of enclosed parking and retail or commercial property of some sort. And then your housing is on top of that. You're confining, you're really restricting what these developers can do with that property by saying floor versus an elevation. That's an opinion. And because you can take that same concept of 45 feet, put it up on a hill, and it feels very different. If you pick an elevation, it makes it a little more consistent throughout your community. It's a thought. Correct.
Which that has been the discussion when they talked about it at planning commission that if you're driving, you don't necessarily see the Holiday Inn because the way the freeway, you're looking at the roof, you don't see Rockwoods at all because it's down in the valley. And I think that's what you're talking
Correct.
about. You know, when back in the day when 101 was flat before they had to raise it, yeah, those buildings would have looked much taller, but the way that the 101 corridor is there and them being down in the valley now, it does seem that makes a little bit more sense to give them some height. I definitely would not want to see that same height over on 19. I think it would look very out of place. Mhm. I was like,
Oh, the percentage on housing supply. Mhm.
for apartments that, okay.
Mayor.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about a greenfield development, like the example on the screen, they have to plat that. And one of the criteria for platting it is looking at the land use that's gonna go on the site and evaluating the sewer capacity or the water capacity, either direction, or the road capacity. So in prior or other applications that have come forward, whether it's a PUD or a straight M1 district preliminary final plat, there will still be a utility study done to ensure there's capacity. There'll be a traffic study done to make sure that the roadways can accommodate the intensity of the land use that's proposed. So, and also because of the way we handle development in terms of we don't zone things to allow for uses until we actually have a development proposal so that we can fully evaluate that. Or that we could fully evaluate to say, wow, you know, we just had 3 6-story buildings put up with 400 units. Do we need another apartment building at this time? Nope, the city's flooding the market with that. We're not going to approve the rezoning at this time because it's unbalancing our housing supply.
Madam Mayor, that was kind of what I was gonna ask what Ryan was, so we don't have that percentage anymore of you're good on the apartments, cause that, and the only reason I ask, as much as I can appreciate that's kind of the big boom is so many residents when I was out campaigning, you know, they don't love apartments around here. A lot of the people have been here a long time.
Maybe.
And
So we did do away with the 10% as a hard, fast rule, just because it became problematic from looking at developments and whether you're really evaluating the development itself.
sure,
And part of it, yes, people you talk to may not like apartments, but there's the need to provide range of housing types and sizes and affordability and styles. You hear developers talk about the change going on in society.
with the
where
baby boomers and all that.
It's
yeah.
not just Otsego that's looking at this. You look at all the apartments going up on the new 610 corridor in Brooklyn Park and Maple Grove. You know, when we first did the multiple family housing study, the city was talking about building heights. The 4-story building was kind of what you saw in cities closer to the metro. Look at all the new buildings along 610
They're
corridor.
very
Now they're 5 or 6-story buildings suddenly. So, and that speaks to the economy of scale and affordability limits too. So, what this proposal isn't necessarily pushing the envelope in terms of what's going on in the housing market within the Twin Cities. It's just defining areas that are appropriate for Otsego to have that type of housing
And it's just an
Yeah.
option.
at a scale, right? But the way we've structured the city's zoning and subdivision controls, city still has quite a bit of discretion to approve certain projects that if you were a metro city, you wouldn't necessarily have.
So
Okay.
one question with that, so. He's still in the audience, but if we were to keep the height restriction on these properties, not go to 75 feet. Somebody could come in and still build 3 different buildings that are 45 feet tall. And you'd have way more houses than if you just let them build one 7-story. I mean, that would be the option for them.
Correct.
So it almost forces them to build it high and then focus on potentially a different retail, like a separate building that's a restaurant, let's say, or something like that, and then attach those commercial to that apartment piece. What would be the restriction if you had the 75 feet and they wanted to put 2 of the 70? I mean, is there a limit, and what would the city's ability to not allow that to happen?
So if, for example, this property, someone came in with 275, you're
Mhm.
going to have requirements for off-street parking, which is going to be a big factor in how that gets accomplished.
Okay.
Then you'd have limitations on sewer and water infrastructure. Because when the city first did its sewer planning back in the 1990s, it was assumed that these areas would develop with a certain density and a certain amount of sewage flow.
And now we're adding.
And so
More.
those trunk sewer pipes are in the ground, and all you're basically doing is allocating out the sewer capacity to other properties. So if somebody comes in at over what was estimated for that area, you have to make sure that they're not taking capacity from some other property downstream that's still or upstream, that still has to develop.
You'd be adding cars to the road and obviously more use on our system. But
Mayor, just speaking generally, so when the city first invested in sewer and water, we did a fairly rudimentary fiscal analysis on the cost of development for 1-acre lots versus sewered lots. The bottom line is density is your friend when it comes to financing public infrastructure and services, because take the single family lots. The acre lots were designed at 150 feet wide. The first sewer districts were 75. So you're getting 2 houses for every 1 unsewered lot, double the tax revenue to the city. Now you're looking at putting, 1 house or 43 homes per acre for every 1 house in an unsewered lot. And the investment that goes into that, plus the way it's calculated at a different, tax ratio, et cetera. So it becomes different. And I'm not suggesting that an apartment building is 43 times the
Yeah.
tax revenue.
Adam's like,
Single
don't be
family.
throwing out those numbers.
Cringing a little bit over tax revenue. A type of development determines the allocation and the tax capacity. It doesn't generate revenue. Revenue is set in terms of a tax levy by the city council. Building this building or that building doesn't increase revenue at a different pace. It allocates it to a different taxpayer based on the tax rate system set by the legislature. So it doesn't derive more revenue solely because you build a different type of product.
Yeah, I was like, Ryan.
just,
You're looking for the break even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan, you mentioned the Brooklyn Park, Maple Grove, the 610 corridor. And those building heights. I think we, when this first came up, we were all like, wow, those are really tall, and then they kind of keep coming. So have those other cities amended their heights of their building given the 610 expansion? Like, what is that? Like, I guess explain to me, because obviously all of their buildings were not that tall before.
No, they were not. And so I'm not certain whether they did it by a certain zoning district. Maple Grove, I know, relies on planned unit development quite a bit.
Okay.
So they may just be responding to developers saying, this is what we would like to propose for this corridor, and the city saying, this is a unique corridor. It's some of our last remaining developable property. So we're gonna maximize that.
Yeah, because their stuff up by the fountains is not
No,
that tall. So it's
Those
not
are
that it's the
4 stories.
new stuff. It seems like it's just in that corridor.
yeah, I first saw it east of or west of 94, and then Brooklyn, the interchange at 169 and 610. They're really building taller, and they're talking about going taller than that even on the northwest corner.
So to kind of recap, the benefit to the city, if this is approved, rather than go through a PUD, would be, let you recap.
Mayor, so it establishes, this is the city's requirements for this type of development. It establishes a level playing field that any developer approaching the city to develop on one of these sites guided for mixed use, they can simply look up the zoning ordinance requirements, design their project accordingly, versus planned unit development tends to be, well, we're gonna base it on this zoning standard, but then we're gonna modify this provision, and and the concern there is it creates, the developer doesn't know what they're getting when they go into it, because maybe they listen to the staff, maybe they listen to the planning commission, maybe they listen to they're
So it's-
working their way through.
It's making a more efficient process.
Right.
Okay.
And you can run into concerns like, well, you gave that developer something, but you're not agreeing to give that to this project. So,
The perception of favoritism.
right.
Yeah.
It's,
Do we have
zoning,
that?
It's always best to be consistent.
And in these areas that you have highlighted, we aren't showing lack of favoritism to the other developers that went in because those are not in mixed use developments. So, am I saying that correctly? Right, like, so over by Coburn's, that would not have been a mixed use option.
Right.
South of Target. And then over Casey Darkenwall's property. Like, it's not like they've missed out on going higher, because those are not areas that we are considering for mixed use.
The city basically established what the standards for those were. For example, you talk about the Coburn's development and even Parish Meadows to the south.
Mhm.
The whole area is, if you look at the two developments together, it's mixed use. You've got commercial 139 and 42, and then the apartment building, and then townhomes. But they all developed under conventional zoning districts, just established for those specific sites.
Okay.
Whereas this kind of combines that all into one district.
Then you still have the discretion to, as a council.
Through a zoning map amendment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, I just want to make a comment. I mean, with 101, the 75 feet, and then other lots, so we'll say 19, because that's what we were talking about, the 48 feet. I personally, I like the diversity within the city, because, with 101, as we mentioned before, with Jesse's previous product or project, I personally didn't have a problem with the height. I think you need that off of something like 101 to visibly see it. I just like that diversity with that area with abutting the Highway 101. And then, of course, others, not so much. Say, again, 19, using that as an example. That the 75 feet would not fit there. There's certain areas that it would, and I think off of the 101 is a great area for that, to have that diversity within our city, and then bring in maybe other, developers. We don't want to leave anyone out. And I think that just makes our city even that much more, I'll use the word again, diverse, with bringing in different developers, different commercial, apartment buildings, whatever it may be. But I do like that aspect of it.
I do appreciate that we've also addressed the step up of the buildings, to be respectful to the people, especially, west of, this is County Road 42. They were here first, and that really does now give them kind of that assurance that we are being thoughtful of protecting their homes and what their views are going to be versus popping something big just because the land finally sells. It pushes it towards the freeway and not in their side yards. That would technically be along 42 there. And I think it also then assures the residents on the west side on 42, and you've got Sunray Farms, Kittredge Crossing, that we're being aware of what that looks like for them too. And pushing it not towards them, but away from them. It will be an issue though. I mean, you do have some homes on the west side of 19 that still could choose to live there. And that gets a little weird there because you would be pushing it towards 19 away from Sunray Farms, but it really would be in their front yard.
Right. Mayor, and
So,
the distinction is those properties are all still zoned to agriculture.
Okay.
And the long-term plan is that County Road 19, both frontages are commercial. So those homes are interim uses. They're expected to go be redeveloped at some point as growth continues. The homeowner can choose to stay there as long as they wish. And you kind of see the same situation on 42 south of 85th Street, the barn and everything there. Well, that whole area east of 42 is going to be commercial at some point, and those homes will eventually be pushed up. Same way Kevin LaFay's farmstead is eventually going to be pushed up.
Marketing wise, do you think this will make this stuff more attractive, or we'll get more of the commercial stuff that we're looking for?
Mayor, I think the expectation would be is if it creates more opportunity for multiple family, it creates more opportunity then for commercial to come behind it. Much the same way as the continued residential growth over the last 25 years has led to the commercial growth we're now seeing on 42 and 39.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Is there any other areas in this proposal that people had concerns with? I will say, I can appreciate too that the parking, I'm glad that we are looking at that and kind of coming up with a formula that we can all agree to. It feels like for a few years now, we've been not comfortable or consistent with it. And we can all tell that, yes, if you're gonna have a office, they're not there at night. So that parking lot sits empty. I think to make it very clear though, the council and the planning commission has always respected and been concerned that the residents that do choose to live in these apartments in these mixed use areas aren't walking super far to get to their apartment. So that's been a concern that's been brought up multiple times. And it's great that some are offering security, which I can appreciate, but maybe that's how it looks now, but you don't know what the next developer is going to bring in. And so pushing and being very thoughtful about what that looks like and not having a empty parking lot doesn't look great on anything either too. So
Madam Mayor.
comment to it. Corey,
Dan, maybe you can talk me off the ledge here. I'm having trouble because I keep envisioning here's the gateway to the new Maple Grove by doing this. And as much as I love working in Maple Grove, I don't want to see Otsego turn into that. And they convince me that that we're not going to be that.
Well, Mayor, it's, Otsego's defining its own character through its comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan talks about the need to provide opportunities for balanced housing supply, which includes apartments because, people will have children. Maybe their children want to live here where you can't afford a townhouse or a single family home. So you start in an apartment. Or as you get older, maybe you want to not do yard work and move to an apartment. That's the societal change that's happening now. So otherwise, Otsego's, as the city, their role is facilitating private market conditions. There's a reason Otsego is growing, and it's because it's proximate to Twin Cities metropolitan area. There's reason that developers are coming out here and talking to landowners to buy. City's role in that is to then provide infrastructure and pace the rate of development so that infrastructure can be, accommodated. So, I've had people comment about, well, I want Otsego to be what it was. Well, what point in time are you talking about? Because Otsego's population in 1960 was 1,000 people. It doubled to 1970. It doubled again by 1990. 2000. So unless you were here in 1960, you're part of the growth that has come out from the Twin Cities and chosen to make Otsego home. That's, if you're not going to move to Otsego, you're going to go to St. Michael, or you're going to go to the next suburb out. It's just,
Right.
Maple Grove didn't look like Maple Grove 30 years ago. So it's kind of an inevitable market reality that this development is happening, and it's the city's role to participate in that in partnership with a willing land seller and a developer that's interested in being here.
and I guess my comment to Corey would be, what part of Maple Grove are we talking about? The shopping
No,
or all the medical facilities? I mean, they have a lot of them, so
no,
I'm just asking.
it's like just crazy busy, and that sort of thing. It's I'm old school in a way. I mean, but in the name of economic development, I mean, if that's what you're suggesting, I mean, I trust you.
Where it's the city's multiple family housing study that was reviewed by the planning commission and the city council, and the comprehensive plan that the planning commission developed and recommended and the city council approved. It's not certainly my decision or
You're the face. You're the face of it.
I simply represent the.
Nah.
I think, I hear what you're saying and totally understand. But you can't stop it. If you don't plan as a community for that development, for that growth, then you're always reacting. And then you have a city that is not well thought out, hodgepodge, and always behind.
Right.
Thank you. That's always our intent. Obviously, as we're looking at each of these applications that come forward,
We've expressed that.
we've expressed that to them too, as though they become our neighbors, and as the developers come in, build, and then leave, what's the city left with? So making sure that we're able to manage that growth and long-term stress on the system.
Mayor, that's where the comprehensive plan fits in with the utility master plans, the capital improvement plan, the annual budget, so that it's all interrelated as part of your decision making process.
All right, questions, comments, otherwise a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2025-04, amending the zoning ordinance regarding zoning districts and mixed uses and approve publication in summary form.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Tina, seconded by Michelle. Is there any discussion? Yes. I guess my comment to that back, Ryan, would just be that I would be concerned if we don't direct where these taller buildings can go, we're going to end up having, as you said, you want to not limit it. I would be concerned that all of a sudden then we're going to get a 7-story request off of Nashua. And that just would seem very out of character. So I feel like this gives us the basis of the corridor, of the 101 corridor specifically in those areas where we've talked about the topography being lower there. So maybe it doesn't look as high. I would agree. I'm not a huge fan of ginormous buildings. I do think they look out of place. That was why I didn't support, and I appreciated that they didn't support it off the County Road 19 area. But I do think there are some areas along 101 where 7 stories might not look like 7 stories as you're driving by. I would agree that it might not feel that way if I'm on the ground looking up, but I'm referring to the bowl areas of I mean, it really does appear to like a bowl once you're on 94 or 101, excuse me, going
Mayor,
both ways.
to be clear, it's basically 60 or 6-story limit at 75 feet, not 7 stories.
Oh, sorry. I said 75 because you had that visual before. Sorry. Sorry. That's exactly where it came from. Correction on my height of the building. So there's no clarification. Nobody's coming back to say, nope, the mayor said 75 feet. No.
We gotta get you set up with Google Earth.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other comments? We do have a motion in a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
I,
Motion passes 3-2. Right,
Right, who else denied it? I'm sorry.
Corey and Ryan.
sorry, Dan.
Okay.
It's the council's decision.
I know.
All right, city council reports and updates. First one is heritage preservation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Cory?
They did not meet this month.
Okay.
I don't have the date in front of me for the meeting next month, but it's
Okay.
planned.
All right, perfect, thank you. Parks and Recreation, Michelle?
We had a great grand opening last week for the Fairs Park, Friedrichs Park. I pronounce that wrong every time. I apologize. So we did not meet. That was in lieu of meeting. I think they had a brief discussion prior to the gathering starting. So the next meeting would be, I think, the 3rd for Parks and Rec.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Planning Commission, Ryan? Perfect, thank you. Public Safety. Okay.
Public safety, Wednesday, we are now starting all of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So the commission agreed to doing that, which is, I think, great. We also discussed recognizing First Responders Month. So I believe it's the same day, the 15th of May, every year. One of the commissioners read off the names of the Minnesota officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. And we also took some time of silence as well to observe those. The commission also discussed recommendations for modifying their language in the mission statement. So we are, or I should say the commission is going to, they tabled that and then they're going to send a copy with the proposed language to Heidi and see what options we can come up for the next meeting, which will be then June 10th.
Okay, thank you. All right. I feel like we're out of order, but we do have 5-1. So we'll do any updates first and then we'll move on to item 5. So does the city council have any updates? Pass along. Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
and I think Adam, we're gonna address the compost site still tonight or no?
We get there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to item 5.1. Ryan. You have your question. Hold on. Is it the application?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Corey?
I'll make a motion to approve pay application number 5 in the amount of $257,709.35 for work completed on the Fire and Emergency Services Facility project.
Second.
Motion by Corey, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-1. All right, moving on to staff, item 6.1, consider scheduling a special city council meeting for audit presentation and budget discussion.
Mayor, the request would be 2 separate meetings. So tonight, I think I'll just keep this short and request June 9th at 6 p.m. for the audit presentation. Would bring back the budget meeting scheduling, which wouldn't have been till July anyway.
So what's it? Yeah, what's June 9th?
June 9th, 6 p.m. please.
6. Oh, okay.
Correct.
I will make a motion to call first. You want to go audit presentation or are we doing budget like
Audit presentation.
audit presentation June 9th at 6 p.m. All right, motion by Jessica, seconded by Ryan. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The meeting is scheduled for June 9th. Moving on to item 6.2.
Mayor, council, an item was added to the agenda tonight and RCA was distributed to you prior to the meeting. So staff is recommending the city council accept a resignation from an employee.
was on the dais for everybody?
Yes.
No, okay. No questions and a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion. Motion to accept the resignation of Matt Sina from the position of mechanic effective May 27th, 2025.
Second.
Motion by Tina, seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion accepted. We are under staff reports and updates. Adam.
Mayor, council, as Councilmember Tanner mentioned, myself and Street Manager Lamson met with the city of Albertville about 2 weeks ago to discuss the future of the compost site. So Albertville has presented some, I'll call them interim solutions to controlling access at the compost site that will involve they've done some landscaping over there. If you've driven by there lately, they've planted a bunch of trees. They're looking to install a gate, hiring an attendant, and finding a little, I'll call it a hut / shed for the employee to work out of. There would be hours restrictions for access to the compost site that's aligned with that. So still working through some of the details with Albertville on that, but our initial target was sometime after the 4th of July to implement those changes. So we've had communications develop a flyer that's in Albertville's hands right now for review. So just kind of waiting for them to keep the ball rolling in terms of when they're ready to go and have everything in place, and then we can notify residents of both communities of the pending changes.
Do they have some proposals on hours and? talk
We
about
do,
that?
and they're not finalized yet, I would say. I know the Albertville City Council discussed them at their last meeting.
Okay.
But I won't say that they're in final form yet, so.
Okay.
But there would be hours, seasonally reasonable, and over the winter, there would be either by appointment for Christmas trees or some undefined schedule yet for the winter months, so.
Okay.
Is Albertville, kind of fielding the same kind of comments from residents that we are? I mean.
Yeah,
same
it's not really
concerns.
from residents where the concern is. It's from people that don't live in either community, or contractors that are abusing the site, which are in turn driving up costs for handling the material and removing it from the site, which is borne by the taxpayers of each of the two communities. So the idea is to restrict it to the people that are paying for that service, get that back in line a little bit, so.
Sounds good.
Yes. Drives up the cost.
Yep. Yeah, one of the examples we looked at during the meeting was, I believe, the city of Orono. So residents have the option to bring in a certain amount of material on their first trip, but if they bring back more on a certain day or it's over a certain size, then they're responsible for paying a charge related to that. I don't want to speak for Albertville with them not here, but I don't think that's their intent right now, is to move to a cost recovery. But it's certainly something that we could explore if that relationship continues, so.
I would agree. I mean, we are paying a lot for the service now, and now we're gonna be adding personnel to it. That's another person. If there's a way to, I believe in Elk River, you get a permit. And that's what gets you in, but it's a key fob. Card reader, yes.
Yeah, not familiar with Elk River, but that's what's done in St. Michael, so a resident has access to a card.
You have to go to
They
City Hall and
receive.
get it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then that starts their access rather than.
Yeah.
But that also costs money to put that system in as
Yes.
well, so.
And don't know if they still do it, but I believe when they switched to that system, and I'm looking to Kevin on, wasn't it like $10 per resident for them to get this? So. Okay. There's no charge? Okay. Okay. And it might have been in the beginning to help recover the cost of that reader system. And I didn't follow it obviously because I wasn't gonna be able to use it, so.
Yeah, and while there will be additional costs for staffing and maybe some of the minor infrastructure improvements with the gate and such, the concept is that the back end cost of chipping
Oh,
and
that
mulching
material.
and removing
Yeah.
the material will largely pay for that, so, or more, so.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that I don't think it's residents abusing it, it's contractors, so. Now we will have to figure that out.
Correct. I think Sergeant Altman's filed a report over the weekend too that can attest to the abuse from contractors that do not live in either community. So,
Let's park a car out there.
Mayor, Council, no other updates from me.
Okay, thank you.
More to come on that in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Audra?
Thank you. I have no updates.
Okay. Dave?
No updates. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Dan?
Mayor, no further updates.
Okay. Ron?
No updates, Mayor.
Daryl?
Thank you. Just an update for the council, but also for the public that the groundbreaking will be tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 for the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sergeant Altman's.
I was once a well-respected narcotics investigator. Now I'm investigating tree trunks being put into a field.
And you don't find it funny.
In the interest of time, the weather definitely changes our traffic behavior. So the number of traffic complaints, parking complaints are way up. Not necessarily in Otsego, but my report on kind of the traffic behavior is we had a lot of crashes over the weekend. I think we ended up having like 5 helicopters over the course of the weekend with injury accidents around the county. So, which is a lot. So
Just regarding speed.
I think each one had its own individual variable to it, whether it's impairment, speed, distracted driving, at least in the county. So we have been busy with car accidents in town. Most of the accidents haven't been injury accidents, but we have seen quite a few. Again, the traffic complaints are way up. We got a lot more motorcycles out there. We got a lot more people out and about. I think we're generating like 2.5 types of traffic complaints a day that are kind of just generic. I shouldn't say generic, but like essentially residents calling in specific locations in the city that they would like us to attempt enforcement. So you can do the math real quick of how the different, of course, of a month, how many different places they'd like us to be at one time, of course. So that's what I have on that. The compost site is apparently now on my books.
Sorry. Thank you. Did you write him a ticket though, if they didn't live in either community?
Oh, you're gonna make me get into it, huh?
Well, I'm
Just-
kind of
just say
curious.
no.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious, but
There was no citation as there was no violation, and there, I would say to this, for the sheriff's office to assist, we're gonna need to get some sort of ordinance on the board.
Dan. Albert.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
has already been mentioned to a city council member for Albertville, Mr. Napstead, so.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If no one else has anything, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tina, seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting is ended. Thank you all for attending.